prominent citizens of Mumbai to talk about their areas of expertise, their connection with the city, and really what their visions for the city are. This is all in the run-up of the MCGM elections that are coming up, with the hope that all those of you who listen to this vote in more informed ways and raise issues that are important to the city. So welcome to yet another Mumbai Charcha, and welcome Abha, my guest for the day. Thank you, Abha, for accepting this invitation.
Thank you. Thank you for having me over.
So I'm excited today, Abha, because it's always sounds like a person I'm going to talk to is somebody who's deeply connected to history. And history has always fascinated me, and spaces have always fascinated me as well. So before I start, let me just introduce you for our audience. Abha Narain Lambah Associates, which is Abha's firm, is one of the leading architectural firms in India, specializing in architectural conservation, building restoration, museum design, historic interiors, and so on. So sounds like a very interesting branch of architecture. Starting in 1998, it's worked on historic sites all over India, from Ajanta and Bodh Gaya to temples in Ladakh and Hampi, to 19th century colonial heritage in Delhi, Shimla, Pune, Bangalore. Wow, the history of the country, and actually touching it closely as well. Decades now, the heritage regulations for Bombay got passed in 1995, and from there the firm has been involved in many 19th century Victorian landmarks. Some of the projects are places we are all very familiar with as well: Kotachiwadi, DN Road, the Royal Opera House, Town Hall, Asiatic Library, Raj Bhavan, and so on. All these places where we hang out, we every once a month at least make it a point to go, so that we remember that we are in the Mumbai that we all love. So sounds delicious, sounds amazing, Abha, that this kind of work that you're doing. And that in fact brings me to the first question very effortlessly. Your connection to the city, your experience of being a Mumbaikar, especially as a person who engages so deeply with things that are distinctly Mumbai. So what's been your relationship with the city? How do you identify as being a Mumbaikar?
Well, I'm over 50 now, and the longest I've lived in any city is Mumbai, because I think I grew up in a household with my father in the government service. We kept getting posted around, and I've been in this city now for 27 years and a very proud Mumbaikar. So I think what this city does to you is initially it's a bit of a shock to all the senses, because it's all like an adrenaline rush, and then you can't. It makes it impossible for you to live or love any other city, and that's been my relationship with Mumbai. And well, this is what is my karma bhumi, and the city I love the most.
So that's the confession of your love for the city.
Absolutely.
Curious, Abha, all these cities around Europe have managed to preserve their heritage, or so I feel, have restored and done it so beautifully. How would you rate Mumbai in terms of our capacity to preserve what we have? Have we done a good job? Have we messed up somewhere? How are we on preserving our heritage?
There are two things to it. I think there's some great achievements, and there's some things that we can do better. So in terms of the fact that if we can actually compare any Indian city with a European city, it would be unfair, because obviously the kind of funding, the kind of resources, and the kind of in Europe, the amount of priority that's given to heritage is amazing, because I think the Europeans learned very early on that they stopped treating heritage like a liability, but started treating it like an asset. And it's essentially a shift of that attitude which changes things, because no one else better than the Europeans realized that they've been literally making money off heritage. Their tourism is heritage related. Even if you see the way Paris or London package themselves as international business cities, they, if you're visiting Paris or London for a business conference for a day, most often you will extend it by 2 days, because you want to visit this place and that place. And they understand that narrative, which Indians have not been able to get, and play to their advantage, that if you have a business destination, but you're able to package your cultural sites, your restaurants, your historic buildings. In the night, you walk down even a city like St. Petersburg, and it's entirely lit up. And so you've extended your tourism and business hours from just daytime to right through the night. That translates directly into dollars. And that is unfortunately, which we in India have not been able to be as savvy about. So yes, therefore it's unfair to compare Mumbai with a European city. But having said that, name another city which has 3 World Heritage Sites. We have, even though Mumbai is seen as a business capital or as a financial center, we have the Elephanta Caves, we have the CSTM, the Chhatrapati Shivaji Terminus, and 93 buildings that make up the Victorian and Art Deco precinct, the ensembles of Mumbai, which are 3 separate World Heritage Sites in this city. And we have, as many World Heritage Sites as, let's say, around Agra can boast of, which Agra would or Delhi would pitch themselves as heritage destinations. And if you add Ajanta and Ellora to Mumbai's kitty, to Maharashtra's kitty, in that sense, Maharashtra would be a leader in just the number of World Heritage Sites. It's just that we don't perceive it as a cultural destination. We always perceive the city as a business destination. So it's a shift in attitude. But then what the city and the citizens especially have achieved is remarkable, because until 1995, all across India, the only way that any heritage could be protected is through it being protected by the Archaeological Survey of India. And all across India, with the kind of the vast architectural heritage that we have, there are barely 3,900 buildings under the protection of the ASI. And Mumbai Island City has none, 0. So given that, Mumbai had absolutely no protection, no central funding for conservation or heritage. But it is to the credit of the citizens of Mumbai that in 1995, the city became the first city in India to establish something called the Heritage Regulations for Greater Bombay. And what it did was, it completely shifted the paradigm from a very monument-centric approach that India and Indian conservation has had, that you're looking at these large monuments, they're mostly tombs or palaces, they're dead forts, nobody's using them. Mumbai changed the paradigm, because all of a sudden, 632 sites, which ranged from a piau to a fountain like Flora Fountain to a public building like the Bombay High Court or the Municipal Corporation building, to railway stations, industrial heritage, urban heritage, even an open space like Oval Maidan, all were recognized by the citizens and the city as worthy of protection. So in a sense, in 95, Bombay became the first and only city in India to acknowledge that other than these old dead monuments, there was heritage that needed protection. The other paradigm it challenged was the idea of age, because the Amasar Act, or the Ancient Monuments and Site Act, even today defines a heritage monument or a monument worthy of protection as being older than 100 years. And in 1995, historic buildings like the Prince of Wales Museum or the Taj Hotel were not even 100 years old. So by virtue of that, a lot of Mumbai's heritage could have been demolished, but it is because of this heritage regulation that the citizens and the city said that no, so what if the Art Deco buildings are built in the mid 20th century, they are still worthy of protection. And from that, I think the very most important contribution of this city on the whole cultural landscape of India is the acknowledgement of non-monumental heritage and urban precinct. So while all of Indian conservation has been focused towards like that one monument, which is standing, let's say the Taj Mahal, everybody worries about the Taj Mahal and its restoration. And around that, the urban neighborhood could be completely decrepit. There could be tall buildings being built and an absence of an urban vision. While in Mumbai in 95, the city of Mumbai acknowledged that there were precincts that needed. So an entire cultural neighborhood, whether it was Fort Precinct or Banganga or Khotachiwadi. So a collection of buildings were as important as that singular iconic building, because that is where the repository of the city's cultural memory rests. And therefore, I think Mumbai has been a path breaker when it comes to defining cultural heritage in India and challenging the concept of conservation.
That's great to know, Abha. Just curious, though, I don't know if you may know this, but was this a visionary chief minister, a mayor, a municipal commissioner, citizen groups? What led to something as visionary as this getting passed in 95?
So in 95, there was a bunch of citizens, who conducted this, through, like, there were a lot of great people I can, name. There was Sham Chenani, Jamshed Kanga, so a lot of people who were citizens who believed that this city deserves this kind of thing, and also knowing the fact that since they did not have any listed buildings, I mean, national protected monuments, and the center would never be looking at heritage and Mumbai together, or Bombay at that point. So I think it is a foresight and the vision of citizens who took this head on. But it's also, I think that's the time when Mr. Sharad Pawar was chief minister. And Mr. Kanga was municipal commissioner. So sometimes, in a public thing, there are some people who are in positions of power who do have a view, or at least an empathy for heritage. And I think that's how this happened. But I give credit to every successive government since then, and every successive like citizens group who, and a lot of times there've been issues where citizens have rallied around and said, no, we need to save this. So I think among all cities of India, for sure, Mumbaikars are the ones who are so actively, not just proud of their heritage, but they go, all out to protect it. And I mean, this has happened in the case of when Crawford Market was to be redeveloped, and there was this proposal of a tall multi-storied building. There were citizens, wearing black bands and protesting outside the BMC building. And today we have managed to save Crawford Market. There have been cases where when we're looking at, the restoration of Oval Maidan, it's citizens groups who've been involved. Dadabhai Nauroji's signage, a lot of citizens have contributed towards keeping this city the way it is.
That's nice. Always a fortunate combination of a government, a municipal corporation, citizens coming together on a single direction.
Yes.
So, Abha, in your work, I'm very curious about what kind of a relationship do you develop with spaces and history? And I'll share the context. I mean, for me, my friends would go to Machu Picchu and click pictures, and I'd be like, oh, that's awesome. And then I realized it was 15th, 16th century, and I lived next to Kaniri Caves, which was like 2nd century BC to 8th century AD, which is like 1,000 years before that. And it just made me wonder about, I guess it made me wonder about people who went all the way into the forest where there are still leopards and kind of parked themselves. And that was just one moment. But I'm curious about your journey, because you're all the time dealing with history, right? You're all the time dealing with spaces. And how does that make you connected to the past? How does, I'm just...
Well, I think I have the best job in the world because I get paid to do the things I love. I get, like people go to, boring conferences and sit in offices in front of computers, and my work is going to a beautiful site and walking around and trying to save it or to restore it. So I think what is so special about this, the work that I've been doing for so many years is just the satisfaction of knowing that something that is so precious and also so fragile, if you've had a very small role to play in keeping it alive and making it relevant to the next generation. Because really culture is like you play a relay race, and you hold the baton, and your job is to grip it and run as fast as you can and make sure that you can pass it on to the next generation in as good a manner without it being battered, without having dropped it. And I think that's really the whole idea of a cultural continuum.
But Abha, are we doing enough to preserve our spaces? Do you think, would you want to see something more, or we're doing a great job of preserving all that we have in Mumbai?
No, I think we need to do a lot more. I think one of the very important, and sometimes you've got to address some pretty solid questions. There need not be always, all very pleasant to deal with. For example, when you're looking at a very basic issue, such as cessed buildings and rent control. Now, if you look at the fact that in Mumbai, we have managed to, to declare some heritage precincts. But the point is that we also can't just, there's also a certain apathy that the heritage precincts have, not even a single heritage precinct has a, a guideline or a bylaw that is specific to that heritage precinct. So if our blanket bylaws of the same FSI and the same height applies to heritage precincts, it doesn't help. It's a one size shoe fits all. So you cannot have Cuff Parade and Kota Chiwari or Malabar Hill and Vanganga, in the same boat. And that's unfortunately something that we've not been able to change. And I'm hoping that this would be an issue, that what do we do about the precincts where almost in some cases 70 to 75% of buildings are cessed buildings, and through a subsequent regulation, which then landed up overruling DCR 67, which is a heritage regulation, under cess reconstruction, you are incentivizing the demolition of a lot of buildings and giving incentive FSI in heritage precincts. So there's nothing left of a heritage precinct if 70% of the buildings are cessed, and the government is allowing those to be demolished, and then tall multi-storied structures are coming up in areas like Banganga, in everywhere else. So between 33(7) overruling and 33(9) overruling heritage regulations, a lot of Mumbai's grade 3 buildings, privately owned, buildings, and and heritage precincts are today more vulnerable given the the high real estate values. We also have no substantial incentives for restoring heritage buildings. So what about buildings that are in the private sector with trusts which have we almost 20 years ago, I restored one building in Horniman Circle just as a pilot, and that was the Botawala building, which was severely rent controlled. So it was owned by the Botawala Trust, but people were paying anywhere between 500 to 5,000 rupees rent, and the onus of responsibility falls upon the owner under the given tenancy laws. So what do you do about such cases where because of our Rent Control Act and no incentives for actually restoring buildings, first we create this kind of neglect to these buildings that leads them to the edge of dilapidation, and then when they are dilapidated, we are incentivizing demolition and giving higher FSI in place, rather than saying this is a historic building, it should not get into that level of dilapidation, and there should be proper repair. And even things like MADA Repair Board do not have the kind of square footage rate to allow for restoration. So a beautiful building like Jar Mahal, which is a historic and at a corner of the Metro Chowk, which has this most beautiful wooden balconies, under the repair board, they could not afford putting back the wooden balconies. So the building has been restored and it's been shown off all its historic and architectural details. So by this, we are virtually losing out all the key elements that make the heritage building special. So we need to look at policy decisions of cleaning up our act as far as policies for conservation, for privately owned structures, for tenanted structures, for guidelines, for urban guidelines, and special bylaws for conservation precincts.
And Abha, just to clarify, cessed building, as you're saying, is an ancient building with a rent control, like an old building with a rent control?
Yes, it's need not be ancient, but yes, a building which are they're about there are about a few thousand buildings of within the island city, which have a similar fate, and that puts a lot of heritage precincts in a very vulnerable position.
So this would be MCGM regulation then, through the development plan and through land use kind of.
So this is something we need to tackle through urban development, through the development plan, and within the heritage committee also waking up and saying the heritage regulations have been around for more than 25 years, and what have we done to ensure that there are specific guidelines for heritage precincts?
Sure. Abha, one question that's coming to me is who pays the bill? And I don't know if you can draw from experiences of other cities abroad. Mumbai has a huge financial community, a corporate community. There is state government, there is MCGM, there is, I know, charging tickets to. So, how does this typically work? Where do the resources for this come from? And what have other cities kind of figured out about these things?
So again, at the get-go, I need to first acknowledge that Maharashtra government has been way more proactive than any other state when it comes to looking after heritage. Because not only the heritage regulations, but around 2007 or 2008, where the government had put in a specific, clause for putting in a seed fund for heritage buildings owned by the government. So a lot of PWD buildings and like the town hall, the Asiatic Library and Elphinstone College, a lot of buildings within that are landmark buildings within Mumbai, for example, are funded. Restoration is funded through the government, which is a very proactive step, considering a lot of them could have been, not looked after as well. Having said that, in that is where we need to have similar a kind of a corpus or a similar strategy for incentivizing the heritage that falls within the realm of public ownership, private ownership, trusts, and such ownership. And that is where if we need to look at very like more, more incentives for either building owners or tenants to be able to receive loans or receive materials at cheaper prices, and especially some kind of an incentive that rather than demolish the building, you could get an incentive for actually restoring it and maybe adaptively reusing it or putting it back to use. For example, Punjab government had put in a cess of a 1% cess for any new industry that was coming into the state had to pay a 1% cess that goes to heritage. So there could be a lot of interesting ways of actually creating resources for this. And especially, I think corporate social responsibility to me would be something where there are unfortunately very few corporates in the country that really are actively engaging in helping restore heritage buildings. I mean, yes, I think JSW Foundation has restored the Knesset Eliyahu Synagogue. They're currently working on restoring the David Sassoon, but that's few and far between. Considering the fact that as a city, Mumbai is so special because it did not depend on government for even the buildings that we see around us. So if you see the trajectory of New Delhi or Calcutta, these were the the capitals of India during the Raj. So all of Central Vista and New Delhi was funded by the government. And before that, Calcutta was this political capital. While the Bombay presidency, most of the buildings that we see around us and we admire, whether it is Elphinstone College or Rajabai Tower or Convocation Hall, were paid for by citizen funding. So Kawasji Jahangir was a merchant and he gave money for the construction of Elphinstone College or Convocation Hall. Premchand Roychand funded the construction of Rajabai Tower. So Bombay has a legacy of its buildings being built, its landmarks being built by corporate citizenry. Why can't we look at corporate responsibility in restoring them? You look at Jamshedji Jiji Bhoy, the Petit family, the Vadias. I mean, you look around and every hospital and every historic library would have been built through corporate funding.
True.
100 years ago.
I'm not even sure if the CSR Act recognizes spending on heritage. I don't know. So does it recognize spending on heritage as a part of the
CSR does recognize spending on heritage, and that is why I think I would urge through your platform more and more corporates, groups to engage and at least be responsible for the city that has given them most of the opportunities. And I really feel that there need to be far greater CSR engagement with conserving Mumbai. I think even as a city, what is so wonderful about this is that this heritage is not a heritage that is a dead heritage. Because for every Mumbaikar, you cannot escape his heritage. You are so intimately, you have a relationship with the heritage of Mumbai, because if you've lived here, you've probably been born in a hospital which was an old heritage building. You go to school, like my daughter went to Abha Pettit School, a beautiful historic building. You go to, if you want to go to a library, whether it's Asiatic Library or Pettit Library, if you're not well, the hospital, whether it's JJ Hospital or Bhabha Hospital, if you you want to get married, and you want to go to the notary, it will be in the Asiatic Library or the old customs house. There's a court case, you die, you want a death certificate.
Yes.
So birth to life, you want to take a train from Bandra to town every day, you go from one Bandra railway station to CST or Churchgate. These are all heritage living buildings.
Yes.
So as citizens, there is no other city in the world where people have such an intimate relationship with their heritage. And a lot of times, like when I work on some buildings, like I was working on Bandra station, and I was standing and getting some, looking at it, and somebody just came and tapped me on the shoulder and said, like, Changla this it. And or I was on the street, people were stopping me when we were working on the synagogue, and just random people would have an opinion and say, oh, this color is looking good, or the lights are looking good. So this kind of, a passion and a sense of great belonging that an average Mumbaikar has for the city is unprecedented for any other city.
That's quite inspiring to hear. And also I'm learning to look at the same things with new eyes, because Bandra station, for example, to re-look at it fresh as a heritage structure, not only as the station from where you get up and get your trains. I think that's a nice invitation, because being in Mumbai, going back to these places, there's a certain like normalization, like, okay, you've seen these, but I think what I'm hearing is, just to look at them with fresh eyes all over again.
Look at them, just fly to Delhi and come back. No, it's like just recently, through the lockdown, we've been working on the Baikala station, which is India's oldest railway station. And how many of us know that? And it was in such a sad state of disrepair that finally we did not wait for the government to give funds. An NGO, I Love Mumbai, and Bajaj Foundation, the Bajaj family, and my firm, we all three came together and said, we will give us our time, our effort free to be able to restore a city landmark. Because, a place like Baikala isn't as fancy as Kala Ghoda is. So you would still get, I was a founder member of Kala Ghoda Association, and in 98 we had trouble raising funds for Kala Ghoda. But today I can happily say Kala Ghoda is very much on the cultural map. So if you needed funds, you could get somewhere. But something like Baikala station doesn't have that kind of advantage or the visibility. And therefore, through the lockdown, it was really good, because while there were people leaving Mumbai, and there was a lot of migrant labor leaving the city, we got the migrant labor to just live inside Baikala station. So we had a captive audience. They worked through the lockdown because the station was not being used as the trains were shut down. And that was a perfect opportunity to quietly, slowly work on the restoration. So we worked through the lockdown, and the project was completed entirely through citizen effort.
That's really well done, Abha, and so good that people like you are on Team Mumbai and batting for it and making these things happen. But this is just a good time to take your appeal and share the groups that are making this conversation happen. The first amongst them is Mumbai First. Mumbai First is an advocacy initiative trying to make this city a better place to live, work, and invest. And they work in partnership with the government, with the civil society, and with business. So just as you have shared this message, Mumbai First also invites concerns, ideas, suggestions on its email ID info@mumbaifirst.org with an assurance that they'll take this up with the concerned group. So this is
good. I hope every year Mumbai First at least gets one conservation project that they get corporate funding for, and
get it going. This is a very sharp, specific target, Abha. I am sure it'll reach, and I hope it gets accepted. The other group that's here is Blue Ribbon Movement. I come from Blue Ribbon Movement. It's a group of young people all over the city who are doing amazing innovations around city, doing citizen audits, coming up with manifestos, designing games that people can play to feel a deeper connect to the city. And if you'd like to support young people doing this work, please connect to Blue Ribbon Movement. Resources are welcome, connections are welcome. It's a city where young people are not indifferent. It's a city where young people are active and doing their bit as well. So Blue Ribbon Movement is also part of this. And the third group or the third platform here is Mumbai Live. Mumbai Live is one of those channels which covers Mumbai specific news and takes it to all the Mumbaikars. So Mumbai Live has very kindly also streamed this on their YouTube channel, which has a large audience. And we hope this will be watched again and again by everyone. So this is a coming together of these three civil society organizations. So just wanted to shout out to all of them. And of course, I don't think we need to put in a word for Abha Narain Lambah Associates, but just to acknowledge the good karma that is being generated through your work for the city. So that's all of us. So Abha, question now for me. So you have a relationship with all these sites all around the city. And I was wondering if I have to take, so I thought of three groups of people, or one is parents, one is friends, and one is my partner, my lover. And let's say I have these three and I want to take them to different places in Mumbai, which evoke a sense of heritage. So I was curious if you would recommend parents को यहाँ ले जाओ, friends के साथ यहाँ hang out करो, और अपनी partner, अपने lover को यहाँ लेके जाओ. Would there be some recommendations for these? Would it be the same reco, or would you have a different reco for each of these three?
Well, I would say take your parents to the opera house, and maybe they'll enjoy some beautiful classical music and an evening at opera house. For your lover, you're right next to Kanheri Caves. I think that's a very beautiful area you can explore within the lap of nature. So and the beautiful Kanheri Caves. And for your friends, I would say you should do a more adventurous thing. They just take a lot and traverse around all the heritage stations and hop in and off railway stations and explore either that or explore the food heritage of Mumbai. There could be, something you do every week. You should explore the forts of Mumbai. You should go to Elephanta Caves. You should you should walk through and explore all the beautiful little neighborhood villages that we have in Bandra, the East Indian Christian villages of Mathur Pakri, Kotachiwadi, Ranvar, Chimbai, Manori, Marve. So there's no end to.
Lots to do with friends. But when you say trains, you could take a Western Central Harbour, any train, and you're saying hop in, hop out, and explore.
Absolutely, like you have Bandra station, Railroad station, Elphinstone station. Bombay Central is a beautiful Art Deco building, even though we tend to pass these without realizing how beautiful. Yes. And obviously Victoria Terminus, Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj station. So we have some beautiful railway heritage in the city.
I heard food, Abha, so I got.
And then if you decide to get married to your lover, then get married at Afghan Church or St. Thomas Cathedral if you're Christian. Go get married at Banganga on the steps if you're a Hindu. There's some beautiful mosques in this city. We have beautiful synagogues. So there's just no end to what the city can offer.
What about food, Abha? You said if you want to do some food, go to some. Is there any food spots which are your favorite spots? Some cafes, some restaurants?
Yeah, but not necessarily heritage.
Let's hear non-heritage and when you were saying food districts, what?
So I think all the little cafes in Kala Ghora are beautiful, and it's just fun to just hop around them. There's Kala Ghora Cafe, there's Pantry, which are some of my favorites. I love at Churchgate Souffle, which is beautiful French food. In Worli, there's there's Lincoln Bardo, there's obviously Jai Hind and Trishna in Bandra and Kala Ghora. So I think, this is very much, Britannia for Parsi food. And I live literally on the Cow Gully in Carter Road. So every few months there's a new restaurant that opens up, and every few months there's a new waffle store or dessert corner. So there's just no end to. Mumbai is
if you're a foodie, there is no end to the food spots. How about a spot that nobody has discovered or very few people know, but is a beautiful spot from a heritage lens?
There's some, beautiful spaces within buildings a lot of times that we tend to ignore. I used to love going right up to if you want to walk right up to the tower of Afghan Church and get a beautiful view, or, the same if you do go walk up the Rajabai Tower or Crawford Market. It just gives you a lovely, bird's eye view of the city. And there's just so many little quiet spaces that you can sit with a book at, in Asiatic Library, and you feel that you've been transported to a different world altogether. There's just so many beautiful spaces that we have in our city.
And spaces within these larger spaces.
Within these larger spaces,
you can find.
You should have your favorite corner within a building. That
do you have one? Do you have a favorite corner or a spot where you go to for solace or for reflection or for just
just sit by the steps of Bandra Fort in the morning, or late, in the evening when there are not too many people there, and have the sea breeze wafting through your hair, and it's so peaceful.
Sounds nice. Just as we're moving towards the close of this conversation, Abha, I'm curious about your vision for the city, particularly from your lens. What would you like to see happen? And assuming that this conversation is available to citizens as well as hopefully some decision makers somewhere, what are your visions for the city? What would you like to see happen?
I would like to see the city embrace its uniqueness. And I think rather than trying to be the Shanghai or instead of Mumbai, I think what the city needs to do is realize what an amazing opportunity and how it's special. I mean, name another city which is surrounded by sea on three sides, which has some of the most iconic monuments and historic buildings, which has, a national park in the heart of, like Borivali is really the heart of the city, which has a geographical, a geological wonder like Gilbert Hill, where, people go all the way to fly to Udaipur and then drive out to Javai to see leopards. And here you have, people whose houses, a leopard would just amble into a house if you're somewhere in Goregaon near RA Colony. So we have the perfect combination of not just the most amazing, high net worth individuals and the finance gurus, and it's the rocking, financial capital of India, but it has the best that nature could give, the best that, with the seascape and the natural as well as the built environment. And I think we just need to start thinking that, hey, we live in a city which is surrounded by the sea. It has a beautiful moderate climate. It's the best city for a woman to feel, a single woman to feel safe in. It has the best work ethic, the most professional ethic in the country. I mean, what else can be asked for? So I think I feel grateful for being in the city, for every day that I spend in the city. And that's when we each have to ask ourselves, how can I make the city better in whichever way? If we have nothing to do with heritage, if we are just professionals and we are able to keep the standard of professionalism high, if we are walking on the street and, if you're a man and that, okay, I can, I have this, on my shoulder, I have this responsibility for keeping the reputation of my city as the safest city for women right there. If we can make better public toilets that are accessible to women and to men, just clean, good public toilets. If we can in any way improve what we have been given, I think that is a responsibility of every citizen. I don't think that is something that we should say, oh, this needs to be done by BMC or this needs to be done by the government. The point is, what are we doing about it?
True.
If we can pay our household staff help a little more generously. I think if we have in our housing society, we have our watchmen. Are they looked after? I mean, if you're not incentivizing them, why should they put their life at stake to guard you? So if we can just be a little better to even another human being in the city, I think that's something that
adding to
we just
the
make the city
pool
better.
of kindness. So celebrating our uniqueness, doing a lot of small things and making the city better. And I think from your answer, I just got reaffirmed that this is a great place to live. I've thought so many times
Oh,
about
it
where else
is.
could I move, and I'm like, this
You know,
is, yeah.
just a small example of how amazing our city is. When the flooding happened in 2005
I think. Yeah, right.
in
Mm.
Mumbai, and I can count three women architects who were working and who had left my office and they could not reach home that night. And each one of them had such a beautiful story to tell of how people, one of them had to walk almost for 5 hours and everything was flooded. And she said there were people just standing outside giving hot tea and biscuits to just random passers-by. They finally got shelter in a stranger's house, and the housing society just sort of said, okay, you four people stay in so and so's flat and you stay in so and so's flat. And the
Mm-hmm.
girls were safe and came back smiling. And this right after that with New Orleans and when the cyclone hit, there was looting on the street. So just the generosity of every Mumbaikar, and you don't have to advertise it, but the city is a very generous city, and I think that's the beauty of it.
That's a really beautiful note, actually, and I would have loved to close it on this note, but I still have one niggling question that I'm still going to ask. If there is a petition that you would start, or if there's a petition around heritage sites that somebody would sign, just curious, what would you say? This is worthwhile to have a petition. Let's petition around this.
Save our precincts. Make
Save our
sure
building.
that 33 precincts, heritage precincts,
Precincts.
because if CES reconstruction, that is 33.7 and 33.9, and cluster redevelopment, which allows for amalgamating two plots to build at very high FSI, are allowed to, they have the potential of completely wiping out heritage regulations and heritage precincts. So please save our precincts, save the smaller neighborhoods of Banganga, of Kota Chiwadi. Otherwise, very soon we will have very little of this left.
Save our precincts. I think that's nice. And there are also people from Blue Ribbon doing manifestos, ward level manifestos, and hopefully they'll be able to take this in and push with political parties, and hopefully it'll happen. I'm a believer. I'm an optimist about these things. So this was good, Abha. Thank you so much for almost like refreshing my eyes and giving me the capacity to look at the city in a whole new way once again. Almost like I fell in love with Mumbai one more time all over in this conversation with you. So thank you so much for this conversation.
Thank you for having me here.
Yes, this was nice. So we'll pause the live, and I'll just request you to stay around for a few minutes. We just close this conversation. And thank you once again, Mumbai First, Blue Ribbon, and Mumbai Live, and team that is making this happen as well.